r/relationship_advice. Dad called me cheap at every party until I exposed his secret. Dad called me cheap at every party until I exposed his secret. The wine glass shattered against the marble floor of my cousin's wedding reception, red liquid spreading like blood across the pristine white tiles. Every conversation in our section of the ballroom stopped. All eyes turned to me, standing there in my thrift store blazer, holding what remained of the stem. Jesus Christ, Maya, my father hissed, grabbing my wrist. Can't you do anything without making a scene? This is exactly what I'm talking about. My cheeks burned as I crouched to pick up the glass shards, acutely aware of the whispers around us. Asterisk, that's David's daughter. The one who still can't get her life together. Asterisk, I'd heard variations of this for years, but tonight felt different. Tonight, I was done. Leave it, Dad snapped, pulling me upright. The staff will handle it. You've embarrassed us enough. He straightened his $3,000 Armani suit, the same suit he'd loudly complained about buying while I stood next to him in a dress I'd worn to 3 other family events. Maybe if you invested in yourself instead of living like a college student, these things wouldn't happen. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that I was working 60 hours a week between my retail job and tutoring gigs just to afford rent in the cheapest apartment I could find. That the $50 I'd spent on his niece's wedding gift represented 2 days of lunch money. That while he was lecturing me about investing in myself, I was drowning in student loans he'd refused to help with because it would build character. I'm sorry, I mumbled instead, because that's what I always did. Apologize for being poor. Apologize for not living up to his standards. Apologize for existing in his perfectly curated world. Sorry doesn't fix anything. He adjusted his Rolex, another recent purchase he'd made sure everyone noticed. You're 24, Maya. When are you going to start acting like an adult? Look at your cousins. He gestured toward Jessica, who worked for her father's law firm, and Marcus, whose startup was funded by family money. They understand what it means to present yourself properly. The familiar shame crept up my throat, but something else came with it this time. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage that I'd been swallowing for years while he paraded around family events, bragging about his self-made success and lamenting his disappointing daughter, who just couldn't seem to get her act together. You're right, Dad, I said quietly, watching his eyebrows raise in surprise. He wasn't used to me agreeing with him. I should definitely learn from your example. Finally. Some sense. If only he knew what I discovered 3 weeks ago. If only he knew that his perfect self-made image was about to crumble in the most spectacular way possible. I smiled, and something in my expression must have unsettled him because he took a step back. Your 50th birthday party is next weekend, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I promise you, Dad, it's going to be unforgettable. I'm planning something really special. A toast that everyone will remember. He preened, probably imagining some heartfelt speech about what a wonderful father and provider he was. He had no idea I'd found Grandma's bank statements. He had no idea his golden reputation was about to shatter just like that wine glass. And unlike my mess, this one wouldn't be so easy to clean up. The Monday after my cousin's wedding, I sat in Grandma Rose's sunlit kitchen, staring at the stack of bank statements spread across her floral tablecloth. My coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but I couldn't stop reading the same numbers over and over again. $8,000 monthly transfer to David Chin, rent assistance. $15,000 quarterly transfer to David Chin, business expenses. $25,000 annual transfer to David Chin, investment fund. 3 years of payments. My father, the self-made real estate mogul, had been taking nearly $200,000 a year from his 80-year-old mother while publicly criticizing her outdated financial advice and my lack of ambition. You look like you've seen a ghost, sweetheart, Grandma Rose said, settling into the chair across from me with a fresh pot of tea. At 83, she still moved with the grace of the dancer she'd been in her youth, but I could see the weariness in her eyes that hadn't been there before Dad's recent visits. Grandma, why didn't you tell me? I gestured at the statements. About the money. About what he's been taking from you. Her weathered hands wrapped around her teacup. David made me promise not to tell anyone. He said it would hurt his reputation, damage his business relationships. He was going through a rough patch and just needed some temporary help. Temporary? I laughed bitterly. This has been going on for 3 years. And he's been using this money to fund his lifestyle while telling everyone, including me, that success comes from hard work and sacrifice. He said he was ashamed, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Said he didn't want the family to know he was struggling. Especially not you kids. The irony was suffocating. Grandma, he's been humiliating me at every family event for years. Calling me cheap, saying I'm an embarrassment, lecturing everyone about how I need to figure my life out while he's been secretly living off your savings. She was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. What are you planning to do with this information, Maya? I thought about his birthday party. About the guest list full of his business partners, college buddies, and extended family members who'd all heard his speeches about bootstrap success and personal responsibility. About the years of small humiliations that had accumulated like paper cuts, each one insignificant alone but collectively devastating. I'm going to tell everyone the truth, I said finally. At his party. In front of all his guests. Grandma Rose's teacup rattled against its saucer. Oh, Maya. Think carefully about this. Once you say those words, you can't take them back. Your father, he's proud. Perhaps too proud. But he's still family. Family doesn't treat family the way he's treated me. And it doesn't take advantage of their elderly mother while preaching about independence. He'll never forgive you, she said softly. And neither will your mother. Or your Uncle Tom. They all look up to David, see him as the family's success story. This will destroy more than just his reputation. I stared at the bank statements again, feeling the weight of what I was considering. She was right. This wouldn't just humiliate my father, it would send shockwaves through our entire family. My mother, who'd always sided with him during our arguments. Uncle Tom, who constantly asked Dad for business advice. My younger brother Alex, who worshipped our father and was planning to join his real estate company after graduation. But then I remembered the wine glass incident. The way he grabbed my wrist. The years of public shame. Maybe some things need to be destroyed, I said. Grandma Rose reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her skin felt paper thin, but her grip was firm. Before you make this decision, there's something else you need to know. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She stood slowly, walked to an old wooden chest in the corner of the kitchen, and pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. When she sat back down, her hands were trembling slightly. The money I've been giving your father, it's not just my savings, Maya. It's your college fund. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Your grandfather left money specifically for you and Alex's education. 50,000 each. When your father came to me 3 years ago, desperate, saying his business was failing and he might lose the house, I used that money to help him. He promised he'd pay it back with interest before you graduated. I felt like I was falling through the floor. You're telling me Dad took my college fund? The money that was supposed to help me avoid these crushing student loans? He said it was temporary. Stop saying that. The words came out harsher than I intended, and I immediately felt guilty seeing my grandmother flinch. I'm sorry, Grandma, but nothing about this has been temporary. Do you know what my life has been like? I work at Target until midnight, then tutor kids at 6 a.m. before my afternoon shift at the bookstore. I eat ramen noodles for dinner because I can't afford groceries. I haven't bought new clothes in 2 years. She opened the folder and pulled out a handwritten letter. He wrote this when I first gave him the money. Read it. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. My father's neat handwriting filled the page. Mom. Asterisk, I can't express how grateful I am for your help during this difficult time. The real estate market crash hit harder than I anticipated, and without your support, we would have lost everything. I promise this is temporary. I will repay every penny of Maya's college fund by her graduation, plus 10% interest. She'll never need to know how close we came to financial ruin, asterisk. Asterisk, I know you're worried about using her education money, but I'd rather die than let my family see me fail. Maya already looks at me like I'm a disappointment. If she knew how badly I'd mismanaged things, I'd lose her respect completely. This way, I can rebuild and still be the father she needs me to be, asterisk. Asterisk, I'll make this right. I promise, asterisk. David. I read the letter 3 times, feeling my worldview shift with each word. He was afraid of disappointing me. Maya, your father loves you more than his own pride. But somewhere along the way, that love got twisted into something destructive. He started believing that if he couldn't provide for you the way he thought he should, then maybe pushing you to be stronger, more independent, would make up for it. By humiliating me. By calling me cheap and lazy. By trying to motivate you in the worst possible way. She pulled out another document. Look at this. It was a bank statement from last month. A $50,000 deposit into an account labeled Maya College Repayment Fund. He's been putting money aside to pay you back. Every month for the past year. But Maya, look at the source of these deposits. I scanned the transaction details and felt my blood run cold. The money was coming from a personal loan against his house. My father had mortgaged his own home to begin repaying my college fund. He's going to lose everything, isn't he? I whispered. If he can't make the payments, yes. The loan payment is due the week after his birthday party. He's been scrambling to close a big real estate deal, but it's been delayed. I stared at the evidence scattered across the table, feeling the careful narrative I'd constructed over the past 3 weeks crumble. My father wasn't just a hypocrite living off his mother's generosity. He was a desperate man drowning in his own mistakes, too proud to ask for help, too ashamed to admit failure. But that didn't erase years of public humiliation. It didn't give me back the nights I'd cried myself to sleep wondering why I was such a disappointment. The party was in 4 days. And I still had a choice to make. I spent the next 3 days in a fog, mechanically going through my shifts at Target while my mind churned over everything I'd learned. Every time I thought I'd made a decision, new doubts crept in. My coworkers started asking if I was sick. Apparently I'd been stocking shelves like a zombie and had given a customer directions to the bathroom when they asked about return policies. Thursday evening, 2 days before Dad's party, my phone rang while I was heating up leftover Chinese takeout, my one splurge this week. Maya. It's Uncle Tom. My stomach clenched. Uncle Tom never called me directly. Hi, Uncle Tom. What's up? I wanted to talk to you about your father's party. Your mom mentioned you're planning some kind of special toast. I nearly choked on my lo mein. She did. Look, kiddo, I know things have been tense between you and David lately. But this party is important to him. A lot of his business associates will be there, some potential investors. Whatever you're planning, just keep it positive, okay? The irony was crushing. Even Uncle Tom, Dad's younger brother who'd always been kind to me, was essentially asking me to keep my mouth shut for the sake of Dad's image. Of course, I lied. I want Dad to have a great night. After hanging up, I stared at my reflection in my apartment's grimy bathroom mirror. The person looking back at me appeared older than 24, worn down by too many double shifts and sleepless nights. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, and my once thick hair looked dull from months of drugstore shampoo and stress. Was I really going to destroy my father in front of everyone he respected? Or was I going to let him continue his charade while I struggled to survive? Friday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I answered the knock on my apartment door to find my younger brother Alex standing in the hallway, looking uncomfortable in his Columbia University sweatshirt. Jesus, Maya, this place is depressing, he said, stepping inside and glancing around my studio apartment with its secondhand furniture and peeling wallpaper. Nice to see you too, Alex. What are you doing here? He flopped onto my thrift store couch, which creaked ominously under his weight. Mom's worried about you. She says you've been acting weird, and Uncle Tom thinks you might be planning to cause drama at Dad's party tomorrow. I busied myself making coffee with my single-cup French press. Why would I cause drama? I don't know. Because you're bitter about Dad pushing you to be more successful. Because you're jealous that his business is doing so well while you're... He gestured vaguely at my apartment. The casual cruelty of his words, so similar to Dad's, made me want to scream. Alex had always been the golden child, the one who never questioned Dad's success or wondered how a family that had supposedly struggled could afford his private school tuition and European summer programs. Alex, what do you actually know about Dad's business? About how he built his success? He shrugged. He worked his ass off. Started from nothing after Grandpa died, built a real estate empire through smart investments and long hours. Why? I studied my brother's face, seeing Dad's features reflected there but without the hardness that had developed over the years. Alex was 21, still idealistic, still believing in the fairy tale version of our family story. Have you ever wondered why Dad gets so angry when I can't afford things? Why he takes it so personally? Because he's trying to motivate you. Because he doesn't want you to settle for mediocrity. The bank statements were in my bedroom, hidden in my desk drawer like evidence of a crime. I could show Alex everything right now. Could watch his hero worship crumble the way mine had. Instead, I poured him coffee and said, "You're probably right." But as Alex left, promising he'd see me at the party tomorrow, I realized something had crystallized in my mind. This wasn't just about my relationship with Dad anymore. It was about whether our entire family would continue living a lie. And I was the only one who could decide which truth they deserved to hear. The party venue was everything I'd expected, an upscale country club with crystal chandeliers and waiters in bow ties carrying silver trays. I stood in the marble-tiled foyer, clutching a small wrapped gift and watching my father work the room like the consummate businessman he appeared to be. Maya. Mom appeared at my elbow, resplendent in a navy dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. You look. She paused, taking in my black dress, the same one I'd worn to Cousin Jessica's engagement party last year. Nice. Simple. Even her compliments felt like backhanded criticism, but tonight I had bigger concerns. Where should I put Dad's gift? Oh, there's a table by the bar. What did you get him? I held up the small package, wrapped in paper I'd saved from Christmas. It's a surprise. What I didn't tell her was that inside was a flash drive containing scanned copies of every bank statement, every transfer record, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. My backup plan, in case I lost my nerve during the toast. Maya Chin. Oh my God, is that really you? I turned to find Jennifer Walsh, Dad's business partner's daughter, approaching with a wide smile. We'd been friends in high school before our lives diverged drastically. She'd gotten a marketing degree funded by family money, while I'd scraped through community college working nights. Hey, Jen. You look great. And she did, designer dress, professional blowout, the kind of polished confidence that came from never having to check your bank balance before buying coffee. Thanks. I just got promoted to senior marketing director at Walsh & Associates. Dad's been teaching me the family business. She glanced around the opulent room. Your dad really knows how to throw a party. This place must have cost a fortune. My smile felt painted on. He definitely spares no expense. Speaking of which, I heard through the grapevine that he's closing some massive deal next week. Dad mentioned something about a commercial development project that's going to make your family serious money. My blood went cold. Next week? Yeah, apparently it's been in the works for months. Your dad's been telling everyone it's going to be his biggest success yet. Jennifer lowered her voice conspiratorially. Dad says if this deal goes through, your father will officially be in the big leagues. Like, serious wealth. I excused myself and headed to the bathroom, my mind racing. If Dad was expecting a major deal to close next week, that explained everything. He wasn't just struggling, he was gambling everything on one final play. The loan against the house, the money he'd been setting aside for my college fund, even this expensive party, it was all betting on a deal that might not happen. When I returned to the main room, I spotted Grandma Rose sitting at a corner table, looking small and frail among the younger crowd. I made my way over to her. Sweetheart, you look pale. Are you alright? Grandma, did you know about Dad's big deal? The commercial development project? Her face crumpled slightly. Oh, Maya. I was hoping he hadn't told anyone about that yet. What do you mean? She glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. The deal fell through yesterday. The investors pulled out at the last minute. Your father called me this morning, sobbing like I haven't heard since he was a little boy. The room suddenly felt like it was spinning. He lost everything. The loan payment is due Monday. Without that deal. She trailed off, but I understood. Dad was about to lose his house, his business, everything he'd built his identity around. And here he was, throwing himself a lavish 50th birthday party, surrounded by people who saw him as the epitome of success, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. The microphone feedback screeched across the room as someone began calling for the birthday toast. I had perhaps 60 seconds to decide, expose a broken man's secrets, or let him have one last night of dignity before everything fell apart. The microphone stood on a small platform at the front of the room like an executioner's block. I watched Dad make his way toward it, his smile bright and confident as guests applauded. He had no idea that his business partner's daughter had just unknowingly delivered the final nail in his coffin, or that I knew his miracle deal had crumbled yesterday. Ladies and gentlemen, Dad's voice boomed through the speakers, thank you all for being here tonight. 50 years old, can you believe it? Laughter rippled through the crowd. I stood frozen near the back, still clutching his gift, my prepared speech dissolving in my mind as I watched him perform for the last time. I've been incredibly blessed in my life, he continued, with amazing friends, family, and the opportunity to build something meaningful through hard work and determination. Uncle Tom whooped from his table. Several business associates nodded approvingly. Mom beamed at him from the front row, completely oblivious to the financial catastrophe waiting at home. But before I get too sentimental, Dad said, scanning the room until his eyes found mine, I believe my daughter Maya has prepared something special to say. Maya, come on up here. Every face in the room turned toward me. My legs felt like concrete, but somehow I found myself walking forward, accepting the microphone from Dad's outstretched hand. He squeezed my shoulder, a gesture that might have looked paternal to the crowd but felt more like a warning. Don't let me down, he whispered, so quietly only I could hear. I looked out at the sea of expectant faces. Jennifer Walsh gave me an encouraging thumbs up. Uncle Tom raised his wine glass preemptively. Alex grinned at me from his table, probably expecting some heartwarming speech about family values and paternal wisdom. Behind me, I could feel Dad's presence, radiating the desperate energy of a man who needed this moment to go perfectly. His reputation, his relationships, his carefully constructed image, it all hung on what I said next. My father, I began, my voice catching slightly before I cleared my throat. My father taught me many things over the years. Dad relaxed slightly behind me. The crowd settled in for what they assumed would be a typical birthday tribute. He taught me about the importance of hard work. About making sacrifices for your family. About the value of independence and self-reliance. Murmurs of approval from the audience. Someone called out, "Here, here." But most importantly, I continued, feeling the words crystallize as I spoke them. He taught me that sometimes the people we think we know best are carrying secrets we can't imagine. Dad's hand found my elbow, a subtle pressure that said be careful. I turned to look at him, seeing past the expensive suit and perfect smile to the terrified man underneath. His eyes held a desperate plea, not just for his reputation, but for his survival in a room full of people whose respect had become his oxygen. That's when I noticed Mom's expression had changed. She was studying my face with the sharp attention she'd always reserved for reading between the lines of family conversations. Uncle Tom had lowered his wine glass, suddenly alert. Even Alex looked confused by the direction of my speech. And in the back corner, Grandma Rose watched me with ancient eyes that had seen too many family secrets destroy the people she loved. The microphone felt impossibly heavy in my hand as I realized that everyone in this room was about to learn something that would change how they saw our family forever. The only question was whether that truth would come from me, or from the bank notices that would inevitably follow Dad's loan default on Monday. "There's something you all need to know about the man we're celebrating tonight," I said. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade, and I could feel the entire room holding its breath. Dad's grip on my elbow tightened to the point of pain, but I pressed forward. "The man we're celebrating tonight is someone who would rather sacrifice everything, his savings, his security, even his relationship with his children, than admit he needs help." A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the direction anyone had expected, including Dad, whose grip loosened slightly as he tried to process where I was going. 3 years ago, when the market crashed and his business was failing, he could have asked his family for understanding. He could have been honest about his struggles. Instead, he chose to protect all of you from seeing him as anything less than the success story you needed him to be. I could see understanding beginning to dawn on some faces, while others remained puzzled. Jennifer Walsh looked genuinely concerned now, probably wondering if she'd missed some major family drama. He took money from his elderly mother, not because he's selfish, but because he was too proud to let his children see him fail. He humiliated me at family gatherings, not because he doesn't love me, but because watching me struggle reminded him of his own failures, and he didn't know how else to handle that pain. Dad's face had gone completely white. Mom's hand flew to her throat, her eyes darting between us as she began to piece together implications I hadn't even spoken yet. "Dad, you took my college fund," I said, turning to face him directly. "You've been secretly borrowing money from Grandma Rose for 3 years. And yesterday, the deal you were counting on to save everything fell through." Gasps echoed around the room. Uncle Tom half rose from his chair, his face a mask of shock and confusion. Alex looked like someone had physically struck him. "But here's the thing," I continued, my voice strengthening as I found my footing. "Instead of admitting any of this, instead of asking for help or showing even a moment of vulnerability, you threw yourself this party. You invited all these people to celebrate a success that's built on borrowed money and false pretenses." "Maya, stop." Dad's voice was barely a whisper, but the microphone caught it anyway. "Why, Dad? So you can keep pretending? So everyone can keep believing the fairy tale while Grandma Rose empties her savings account and you mortgage the house you're about to lose anyway?" Jennifer Walsh's father was already reaching for his phone, probably to check his own business dealings with Dad. Other guests were exchanging worried glances, the social dynamics of the room shifting by the second as people began to distance themselves from potential financial scandal. "The saddest part," I said, feeling tears threatening for the first time that evening, "is that nobody in this room would have thought less of you for being human. For struggling. For needing help. But now." I gestured to the crowd, where I could already see some people making subtle moves toward the exit. Others were whispering urgently to their spouses, probably calculating their own exposure to Dad's business dealings. "Now you've created something so much worse than temporary financial problems. You've destroyed trust. You've made everyone question what else you've been lying about. You've turned your family into unwilling accomplices in your deception." Dad reached for the microphone, but I stepped back, keeping it just out of his grasp. "I brought you a gift tonight, Dad," I said, holding up the small wrapped package. "It's a flash drive containing copies of every bank statement, every loan document, every piece of evidence of what's really been happening in our family. I was going to expose everything publicly, let everyone see exactly how the great David Shin built his empire." The room was dead silent now, everyone straining to hear what came next. But instead, I'm giving you a choice. The room was so quiet I could hear the ice melting in abandoned cocktail glasses. Dad's face had shifted from white to an alarming gray, and I realized with a spike of panic that he might actually collapse right here on the platform. "You have 2 options," I continued, my voice surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. "Option 1, take this microphone and tell everyone the truth yourself. Explain about the loans, about Grandma's money, about the failed deal. Ask for help instead of hiding behind pride." I held out the microphone toward him, watching his hands tremble as he stared at it like it might bite him. "Or option 2, I will tell them everything. Every detail. Every bank transfer. Every lie you've told to maintain this image." Maya, Mom's voice cut through the silence like a blade. She had risen from her seat, her composed mask finally slipping to reveal something raw and furious underneath. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The interruption seemed to break the spell holding the room captive. Several people began talking at once, their voices creating a low buzz of confusion and concern. I saw Mr. Walsh lean over to whisper something urgent to his wife, while Uncle Tom was frantically texting someone, probably trying to get more information about Dad's business situation. "I'm giving him a chance to save his family," I said, raising my voice to carry over the growing murmur. "Something he should have done 3 years ago. By humiliating him in front of everyone he cares about. Mom demanded, moving toward the platform. By destroying his reputation and our family's privacy. His reputation was going to be destroyed anyway. The words came out harsher than I intended, and I saw several people flinch. Mom, he's about to lose the house. His loan payment is due Monday, and there's no money to cover it. Did you know that? Did you know your husband mortgaged our home to try to pay back my college fund? The color drained from Mom's face so quickly I thought she might faint. What college fund? Dad finally found his voice. Sarah, not here. Please. We can discuss this at home. No. The word exploded out of me with such force that even I was surprised. No more at-home discussions. No more secrets. No more protecting everyone from the truth while some people suffer in silence. I turned back to address the crowd, feeling a reckless energy building in my chest. How many of you knew that my father borrowed $50,000 from his 80-year-old mother? Money that was supposed to pay for my education. Grandma Rose made a soft sound of distress from her corner table, and I felt a stab of guilt for dragging her into this so publicly. But it was too late to pull back now. How many of you knew that while he's been lecturing me about financial responsibility and calling me cheap at family events, he's been funding his lifestyle with borrowed money? Maya, please stop. Alex had left his table and was approaching the platform, his face a mixture of confusion and horror. This isn't you. You don't want to destroy our family like this. I looked at my younger brother, seeing Dad's golden boy finally starting to understand that his perfect world had been built on quicksand. Our family was destroyed the moment Dad decided his pride was more important than honesty. That's enough. The voice belonged to Uncle Tom, who had pushed his way to the front of the crowd. His face was flushed with anger, and he pointed an accusatory finger at me. I don't know what kind of breakdown you're having, Maya, but this stops now. Whatever problems you have with your father, you handle them privately. You don't destroy a man's livelihood in front of his colleagues. Uncle Tom's words hit me like a slap, but they also crystallized something that had been building inside me for years. I turned to face him, feeling a strange calm descend over the chaos. His livelihood. I laughed, and the sound was bitter even to my own ears. Uncle Tom, there is no livelihood left to destroy. The deal fell through yesterday. Dad's been living on borrowed time and Grandma's retirement savings. You're lying, Tom said, but his voice wavered with uncertainty. David would have told me if things were that bad. We're partners in the Morrison Street development. If he was struggling financially. The Morrison Street development. I interrupted, pieces clicking together in my mind. Uncle Tom, how much of your own money did you invest in that project? The blood drained from his face so quickly that several people nearby stepped forward, thinking he might collapse. David, you said the financing was secure. You said. Oh God, Dad whispered, finally understanding the full scope of what was about to unfold. This wasn't just about his own humiliation anymore. Tom, I can explain. How much? Uncle Tom's voice was deadly quiet now, cutting through the murmur of concerned guests. 200,000, Dad said, barely audible. But I'm going to make it right. I have another deal in the pipeline, a residential development that. Stop. Uncle Tom's wife, Aunt Linda, had appeared at his side, her face white with panic. Tom, please tell me you didn't take money out of the kids' college funds for this. The silence that followed was answer enough. Uncle Tom staggered backward, and I watched my father's financial collapse ripple outward like a stone thrown into still water, hitting my aunt and uncle, my cousins who were supposed to start college next year. Jesus Christ, David, someone called out from the crowd. I thought it was Mr. Walsh. How many other people are you into for money? That's when I realized I'd opened a floodgate I couldn't control. This wasn't just about exposing Dad's hypocrisy anymore. Other voices began joining in, business partners and investors suddenly questioning every deal, every promise, every financial arrangement they'd made with the man they trusted. The Riverside Plaza project. Told me the permits were already approved. My retirement account. The room erupted into chaos as people began pulling out phones, making frantic calls to accountants and lawyers. I watched in growing horror as I realized that my quest for justice had just destroyed not only my father, but potentially dozens of families who trusted him with their savings. Maya. Grandma Rose had somehow made it through the crowd to reach me, her ancient hands grasping my arm with surprising strength. What have you done, sweetheart? I was trying to make him tell the truth, I said, feeling tears finally start to fall. I wanted him to stop pretending, to stop humiliating me, to just be honest for once. And now. She gestured to the chaos around us, where my father stood motionless in the center of an expanding circle of angry investors and family members demanding answers. I looked at Dad, really looked at him, and saw not the confident businessman who tormented me for years, but a broken man watching his entire world crumble in real time. His shoulders had sagged, his carefully styled hair was disheveled from running his hands through it, and his expensive suit suddenly looked like a costume he was no longer able to wear convincingly. Now I think I've become the thing I hated most about him, I whispered. The chaos around me seemed to move in slow motion. I watched Uncle Tom sink into a nearby chair, his wife's hand on his shoulder as she whispered frantically in his ear. Across the room, Mr. Walsh was already heading for the exit, his phone pressed to his ear. Other guests clustered in small groups, their animated conversations punctuated by worried glances toward Dad. And my father stood in the center of it all, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Maya, we need to leave. Now. Mom had appeared beside me, her grip on my arm painful. Before this gets any worse. Worse? I stared at her. Mom, how could this possibly get worse? As if summoned by my words, the country club's manager appeared at the edge of the crowd, his face pale as he approached Dad. Mr. Chen, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been an issue with your payment for tonight's event. The card was declined, and... Not now, Richard, Dad said quietly, but his voice carried across the room in the sudden hush. Sir, the total is $12,000, and we'll need payment before. I said not now. Dad's composure finally cracked, his voice rising to a shout that made several people jump. The manager stepped back, clearly uncomfortable with the public nature of what was normally a private conversation. But the damage was done. Another piece of Dad's facade had crumbled in front of everyone. Jennifer Walsh materialized beside me, her earlier friendliness replaced by something colder. Maya, my dad wants to know if your father still has access to the Walsh and Associates client accounts. Apparently there were some irregularities in the quarterly reports. I felt like I was drowning. I don't know anything about his business accounts. Right. Her smile was sharp. Because you're just the daughter who works at Target and can barely afford rent. Except somehow you knew enough about his finances to orchestrate this whole expose. Before I could respond, she was gone, weaving through the crowd back to her parents. I realized with growing dread that I wasn't just witnessing my father's downfall, I was being implicated in it. People were starting to wonder how much I'd known, whether I'd been complicit in whatever financial crimes they were beginning to suspect. Maya Chin. A man in an expensive suit approached me, pulling out a business card. Robert Hawkins, SEC Fraud Investigation Unit. I think we need to have a conversation. My blood turned to ice. I'm sorry, what? Your little speech tonight has raised some serious questions about potential securities fraud. If your father has been misrepresenting his financial position to investors, that's a federal crime. And if you've been aware of these irregularities. She's 24 years old and works retail, Grandma Rose interjected, appearing between us with more strength than I thought she possessed. Whatever my son has done, this child had nothing to do with it. Ma'am, with all due respect, this child just demonstrated detailed knowledge of complex financial arrangements spanning multiple years. That suggests either sophisticated planning or maybe she just wanted to embarrass her father at his birthday party, Alex interrupted, his voice bitter. He looked at me with something I'd never seen before, real hatred. Maybe she's just vindictive and selfish and didn't think about what this would do to the rest of us. Alex, I was trying to. To what? Help me. Because guess what, Maya, I was supposed to start working for Dad's company next month. Now what? Now I get to graduate college with no job prospects and a family name that's apparently synonymous with fraud. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. He was right. In my desire for justice, for vindication, for one moment where Dad would finally face consequences for his actions, I destroyed Alex's future too. And what about Mom? Alex continued, his voice rising. Did you think about her when you decided to humiliate Dad publicly? She's been married to him for 26 years, Maya. Her entire identity is tied up in being his wife, in the life they built together. What happens to her now? I looked across the room at Mom, who was standing beside Dad as he tried to answer increasingly hostile questions from former business partners. Her face was a mask of forced composure, but I could see the tremor in her hands, the way she kept glancing toward the exits as if calculating escape routes. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, I whispered. Then what did you mean? Alex demanded. What exactly was your endgame here? I realized with horrible clarity that I didn't have an answer. I'd been so focused on exposing Dad's hypocrisy, so consumed with getting revenge for years of humiliation, that I'd never thought past this moment. I'd imagined some kind of satisfying confrontation where he'd be forced to acknowledge his mistakes and apologize. I hadn't imagined SEC investigators. I hadn't imagined Uncle Tom losing his retirement savings. I hadn't imagined Alex's future crumbling or Mom's world collapsing. The room suddenly felt suffocating, filled with too many angry voices and accusatory stares. I needed air, needed space to think, needed to figure out how to undo what I'd just done. But as I pushed through the crowd toward the exit, I heard Dad's voice calling my name. Maya, wait. I turned to see him breaking away from the group of investors, his face desperate as he approached me. For the first time in my life, my father looked like he needed me more than I needed his approval. We have to fix this, he said quietly. Together. Together. The word felt foreign in my mouth as I stared at my father's desperate face. You want to fix this together? Where was together when you were taking my college fund? Where was together when you were humiliating me at every family gathering? Maya, please. Dad's voice cracked, and I realized several guests were still watching our exchange despite the chaos around us. I know I've made mistakes, but right now we need to focus on damage control. That SEC agent is here because of your choices, I hissed, stepping closer so our conversation wouldn't carry. Don't you dare try to make me responsible for cleaning up your mess. But even as the words left my mouth, I could see the truth reflected in his eyes. We were both responsible now. He'd created the financial disaster, but I turned it into a public spectacle that had attracted federal attention. Mr. Chin. The SEC agent appeared beside us again, his attention focused entirely on Dad now. I'm going to need you to come with me for some preliminary questions. And Miss Chin, he turned to me, don't leave town. We'll want to speak with you as well about how you obtained access to confidential financial records. My stomach dropped. I didn't obtain anything illegally. My grandmother showed me. Grandma Rose is 83 years old, Dad interrupted quickly. Whatever documents she shared, she probably didn't understand their significance. Maya had no way of knowing these were confidential business records. I stared at him in shock. Even now, even after everything I'd just done to him, he was trying to protect me from legal consequences. That may be, the agent said, but we'll need to verify that independently. Mr. Chin, if you could come with me. As Dad was led away, I felt a hand grab my shoulder. I turned to find Uncle Tom's face inches from mine, his eyes blazing with fury. 60 years, he said, his voice low and dangerous. 60 years our families have been close. I was at your baptism, Maya. I taught you how to ride a bike. And this is how you repay that. By destroying my brother in front of everyone we know. Uncle Tom, I didn't know about your investment. I didn't know he'd involved you in his business deals. You didn't know. Or you didn't care. His grip tightened. My daughter starts college in the fall. My son is applying for medical school. That money you just cost me. That was their future. Aunt Linda appeared behind him, gently pulling his hand away from my shoulder. Tom, let's go home. We need to call our lawyer, figure out if there's any way to recover the money. As they walked away, I heard her whisper, how could David do this to us? How could he risk everything like this? I wanted to follow them, to apologize, to somehow fix what I'd broken. But before I could move, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Saw the news about your dad online already. Interested in selling your story to the press? Big money for family insider perspective. Call me. Jake Morrison, Channel 7 News. My blood ran cold. What news? What's online? I frantically opened social media apps, searching for any mention of tonight's events. What I found made me physically nauseous. Someone had been live streaming my speech. The video was already viral, with thousands of views and hundreds of comments. The headline on the first news article I found read, "Local real estate mogul exposed AS fraud by own daughter at birthday party." The comments were brutal. That daughter is savage. Family loyalty is dead LMAO. Plot twist, she's been planning this revenge for years. Both of them are probably criminals TBH. I scrolled through dozens of similar reactions, each one making me feel sicker. This wasn't just family drama anymore, we'd become entertainment. Public spectacle. A cautionary tale about greed and family dysfunction that strangers were consuming for their amusement. Another text arrived, "Maya, this is Mom. Don't come home tonight. I need time to process what you've done to our family." Then Alex, "Hope it was worth it. Hope destroying everyone you claim to love was worth your moment of revenge." Then an unknown number, "This is Channel 12. We'd like to offer you $5,000 for an exclusive interview about your father's financial crimes." And another, "Entertainment Tonight wants to discuss a tell-all book deal." I turned off my phone, but the damage was already spreading beyond my control. In trying to expose my father's lies, I turned our family's pain into public consumption. And now everyone I loved was paying the price for my need for justice. I stumbled out of the country club into the humid evening air, my hands shaking as reporters' business cards fluttered from my purse onto the asphalt. The parking lot had become a circus, 3 news vans were already setting up, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like metal flowers blooming in the darkness. There she is. A woman in a red blazer thrust a microphone toward my face. "Maya Chen, can you comment on the allegations against your father? Was this exposure planned, or?" I pushed past her, fumbling for my car keys, but she followed with a cameraman in tow. Other reporters noticed the commotion and began converging on my location like sharks sensing blood. "Miss Chen, sources say your father may have defrauded investors out of millions. How long have you known about his illegal activities? Are you cooperating with federal investigators? Is it true you're shopping a book deal about growing up in a criminal family?" No. The word tore from my throat. This wasn't supposed to, I never meant for. My phone, which I'd turned back on to call an Uber, was buzzing constantly with notifications. News alerts, social media mentions, interview requests, and messages from numbers I didn't recognize. But it was the familiar number that made my heart stop. "Maya, this is Jennifer's mom. The Walsh family has been friends with yours for 15 years. How could you be so selfish? Your father owes us $80,000 from the Riverside project. My husband trusted him. We all trusted him." Another message appeared immediately after, "This is the Patterson family. We invested our daughter's wedding fund based on your father's recommendations. Thanks to tonight's little performance, we now know that money is gone. I hope you're proud of yourself. Then, Maya, it's Mrs. Rodriguez from down the street. I've known you since you were 5 years old. Your father helped us refinance our house last year. Please tell me our mortgage isn't in danger because of whatever's happening." Each message was a fresh weight on my chest. Every family in our neighborhood, every friend of my parents, every business relationship Dad had cultivated over 20 years was now questioning everything. And they all seemed to blame me for opening Pandora's box. A new text from Alex made my knees buckle. "Columbia called. They've suspended my internship pending investigation into our family's financial situation. My roommate just sent me the Twitter hashtag about us. Hashtag Chen family fraud is trending. Maya, what the hell have you done?" I finally reached my car, but my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't get the key in the lock. Behind me, the reporters continued shouting questions, their camera lights turning the parking lot into a bright stage where my breakdown was being broadcast live to thousands of viewers. "Miss Chen. Channel 9 News. Are you planning to testify against your father in federal court?" That question stopped me cold. I turned around, staring at the reporter who'd asked it. Federal court. Her eyes lit up, I'd given her a reaction, which meant good television. "You weren't aware that the FBI has opened a formal investigation? Sources say your father could face up to 20 years for securities fraud, if convicted." 20 years. The words echoed in my head as I finally managed to unlock my car and collapse into the driver's seat. Through my windshield, I could see the country club entrance, where other guests were emerging to find the media circus waiting. I recognized several faces, family friends who were probably just learning that their financial advisor, their trusted neighbor, their children's honorary uncle, was potentially a federal criminal. And I was the daughter who'd exposed it all on live stream for the entertainment of strangers. My phone buzzed with one final message that made my world tilt completely off its axis. "Maya, it's Grandma Rose. I'm at the hospital. Your father collapsed in federal custody. Please come." I drove to the hospital in a haze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white. The reporters had followed me for 3 blocks before losing interest when I took a series of random turns through residential neighborhoods. Now I sat in the hospital parking lot, staring up at the imposing concrete structure, knowing that once I walked through those doors, there would be no more pretending this was all some terrible nightmare I could wake up from. My phone had been buzzing constantly during the drive, more news outlets, more angry investors, more family friends demanding explanations. But the message that kept replaying in my mind was from Mom, "Your father had a heart attack." The stress. "Maya, what if we lose him too?" Inside the hospital, the fluorescent lights felt harsh after the dimness of evening. The antiseptic smell made my stomach churn as I approached the reception desk with unsteady legs. "I'm looking for David Chen," I told the nurse. "He was brought in from federal custody." Her expression shifted subtly, not quite judgment, but definitely recognition. Even here, apparently, our family drama had already made the rounds. "Are you family?" "I'm his daughter." She directed me to the cardiac wing, where I found Grandma Rose sitting in a plastic chair that looked like it was swallowing her whole. Her usually perfect silver hair was disheveled, and she clutched a tissue box like a lifeline. "Sweetheart," she said when she saw me, her voice barely above a whisper. "They won't let me see him yet. The doctors are running tests." I sank into the chair beside her, feeling the weight of everything that had happened crushing down on my shoulders. "Grandma, is he going to be okay?" "I don't know. The federal agent said he just collapsed during questioning. Started clutching his chest, couldn't breathe." Her voice broke. "Maya, he's only 50 years old. This kind of stress, it can kill a person." The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent years wanting my father to face consequences for his actions, and now that he was, I was terrified of losing him entirely. "Where's Mom? And Alex?" "Your mother is trying to find a lawyer." "Alex." Grandma Rose's face crumpled. "Alex won't come. He said he can't look at your father right now, knowing what he's done to the family." Before I could respond, my phone rang. Unknown number, which I'd been ignoring all evening, but something made me answer this time. "Maya. This is Detective Sarah Martinez with the Financial Crimes Unit. I need you to come down to the station tomorrow morning for questioning regarding your father's business dealings." My mouth went dry. I already told the SEC agent, I don't know anything about his business. "That may be true, but we have reason to believe the financial records you accessed were obtained through illegal means. Your grandmother's bank statements, the loan documents you referenced tonight, some of those are protected under federal banking privacy laws." The room started spinning. "I didn't hack anything. Grandma Rose showed me the papers voluntarily. Mrs. Chen is 83 years old and may not have had legal authority to share certain documents, especially if they contained information about third-party accounts. We need to determine whether you committed any felonies in gathering this evidence." Felonies. The word hit me like a physical blow. I was just trying to understand why my father was taking money from his elderly mother. That's for the courts to decide. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Don't bring a lawyer yet, this is just preliminary questioning. "But Miss Chen." "Stop talking to reporters. Anything you say publicly can and will be used in federal court." She hung up, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. I'd gone from being a victim of my father's financial manipulation to being a potential criminal myself. "What was that about?" Grandma Rose asked, studying my face with concern. Before I could answer, Mom appeared at the end of the hallway, her heels clicking against the linoleum as she approached us. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was falling out of its careful arrangement, and she looked like she'd aged 10 years since dinner. "The lawyer says it's bad," she announced without preamble. "Federal securities fraud, wire fraud, potentially money laundering. If David survives this heart attack, he's looking at decades in prison." She turned to me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before, pure, undiluted hatred. "I hope you're satisfied, Maya. You've finally gotten your revenge." I stared at Mom's face, seeing my own features reflected back at me but twisted with an anger so raw it made me physically recoil. "Mom, I never wanted him to have a heart attack. I never wanted him to go to prison." "Then what did you want, Maya?" Her voice was deadly quiet, which was somehow worse than if she'd been screaming. "When you stood up there with that microphone, when you decided to destroy your father in front of everyone he's ever respected, what exactly was your endgame?" Other families in the cardiac waiting room had started to stare, drawn by the tension crackling between us. I lowered my voice, trying to pull her into the conversation rather than performing our dysfunction for yet another audience. "I wanted him to stop humiliating me. I wanted him to acknowledge what he'd done to our family, to Grandma, to me. I wanted." "You wanted to hurt him," Mom interrupted. "Just like he hurt you. Except you decided to do it publicly, with federal agents watching, with our entire community bearing witness." A doctor in green scrubs approached our tense circle, consulting a tablet in his hands. "Family of David Chen." "That's us," Mom said, immediately shifting into the composed mask she wore for professional interactions. "Mr. Chen is stable, but he's had a significant cardiac event. The stress appears to have triggered what we call Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. Essentially, his heart muscle temporarily weakened due to extreme emotional trauma." I felt Grandma Rose's hand find mine, her grip surprisingly strong. "Can we see him?" Mom asked. "He's sedated right now, but yes, immediate family can visit briefly." However, the doctor's expression grew more serious. "There are 2 federal agents outside his room who've requested to be present during any family conversations." The reality hit me like a sledgehammer. Even unconscious and hooked to heart monitors, Dad was still under federal investigation. Our family crisis had become evidence in a criminal case. "There's something else," the doctor continued, glancing at his tablet uncomfortably. "The hospital's billing department wanted me to inform you that Mr. Chen's insurance has been flagged due to the ongoing investigation. Payment arrangements will need to be made before." "How much?" Mom asked sharply. "For the emergency cardiac intervention and projected 3-day stay, approximately $47,000. I watched Mom's composure crack slightly around the edges. Our family's assets were frozen pending the federal investigation, Dad's business accounts were inaccessible, and now we owed nearly $50,000 for the medical emergency my actions had triggered. "We'll figure it out," she said, but I could hear the desperation underneath. As we walked toward Dad's room, my phone buzzed with yet another message. This time it was from a number I recognized, my supervisor at Target. "Maya, corporate called. Due to the media attention surrounding your family, they're putting you on unpaid leave pending investigation. Please don't come in for your scheduled shifts." Perfect. I'd lost my father's respect, destroyed my family's finances, potentially committed federal crimes, and now I'd lost my job. The domino effect of my choices was accelerating beyond any possibility of control. At Dad's room, 2 men in dark suits stood flanking the doorway like sentries. Through the window, I could see him lying motionless, connected to machines that beeped steadily in the sterile air. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, fragile in a way that made my chest tighten with unexpected grief. 10 minutes, one of the agents said. "And remember, anything discussed in that room may be relevant to the ongoing investigation. Even our goodbye might become evidence against us." I stood in Dad's hospital room, watching the monitors track his heartbeat, and realized I had one last choice to make. The federal agents stationed outside the door were waiting to question him the moment he woke up. Mom sat rigid in the corner chair, her anger radiating like heat. Grandma Rose held his hand, whispering prayers in Mandarin. Maya, Dad's voice was barely a whisper. His eyes had opened while I wasn't looking. The agent stepped forward, but I moved to his bedside first. Dad, don't talk. The agents are here, and anything you say. I need to tell you something, he interrupted, his voice gaining strength. Before they arrest me officially. Sir, one agent warned, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be. I waive my rights, Dad said clearly. I want my family to hear this. He struggled to sit up slightly, his eyes finding mine. Maya, you were right to expose me. I've been lying to everyone, including myself, for 3 years. The agents began recording, but Dad ignored them completely. I took your college fund because I was too proud to admit I'd failed. I humiliated you at family gatherings because seeing you struggle reminded me of my own failures, and I was too much of a coward to face them honestly. Tears were streaming down his face now. I thought if I could just make one big deal work, I could fix everything quietly. Pay everyone back, rebuild the business, pretend none of this ever happened. David, stop talking, Mom whispered urgently. No, Sarah. I'm done hiding. He turned back to me. Maya, you did something I couldn't do. You told the truth, even when it was going to hurt people. Even when it was going to hurt you. I felt my own tears starting. Dad, I never meant for you to have a heart attack. I never wanted to destroy the family. You didn't destroy anything, sweetheart. I did that all by myself. He looked toward the agents. I've been running a Ponzi scheme for 18 months. Taking money from new investors to pay back earlier ones. The Morrison development, the Riverside project, none of them were real. One agent stepped forward. Mr. Chen, we strongly advise you to stop speaking without legal counsel present. I'm 50 years old, and I just had a heart attack from the stress of living a lie, Dad said. I'm not spending whatever time I have left in prison pretending to be innocent. He turned to Uncle Tom, who had just appeared in the doorway. Tom, I stole your retirement money. There's no development deal. There never was. Uncle Tom's face went white, but he stepped into the room anyway. David, you stubborn bastard. Why didn't you just ask for help? Because I was supposed to be the successful one. The one who had everything figured out. Dad's laugh was bitter. Stupid pride. I reached for his hand, surprised when he squeezed mine back. What happens now? Now I plead guilty and try to help the FBI recover whatever money I can for the people I hurt. Now I serve my time and hope that someday, my family might forgive me. Dad. Maya, you're going to be okay. You're stronger than I ever was. You told the truth even when it was terrifying. He smiled weakly. I'm proud of you for that. Mom finally spoke, her voice thick with tears. David, I can't forgive you yet. But I won't abandon you either. The agents moved in then, and I knew our time was over. But as they began the formal arrest process, Dad looked at me one more time. Thank you, he said quietly. For setting us free. 6 months later, I testified at his sentencing hearing. Not as a witness for the prosecution, but as his daughter, asking the judge to consider the man who had finally learned to choose truth over pride. He got 8 years. It felt like both too much and not enough. But we were finally, honestly, a family again.